Welcome everyone to the annual general meeting of NHS Direct NHS Trust. We have an extended day ahead of us, chunked up into sections. So we envisage that the AGM, which will start now, is going to last about an hour, and it's going to be an entertaining multimedia experience, both for those of us in the room and for anyone else who's following us online. After the AGM, we'll have a very short break. We'll then move into a public board session, which is our monthly session for the board, which will be followed by a private session and an extended strategy session after lunch. So it's quite a day, and I've had lots of help from people who have contributed to the choreography of the proceedings, who will be called upon at various points to help us out. Okay, so I hope you will have seen the agenda for the annual general meeting. I'd like to introduce it just by welcoming you, and first of all our first piece of formal business is to approve the minutes of the AGM, which was held last year on the 25th of July, and they have been approved by the board at the following meeting, but we need today to note those. I'm assuming that there aren't any comments on those minutes, fascinating as they are. Okay. Then I have apologies for absence to give you from two of our non-executives today, Louisa Dillner and Sue Hunt, one of whom is detained by work, the other by holiday. I haven't received any declarations of interest from anybody in relation to the agenda today. This is your opportunity to correct that. No, we don't have any declarations of interest now. So let me move on to the from those formal things that we have to do towards a more of a description about the year that we have just been through, which is I'll spend a couple of minutes on before handing over to the Chief Executive, who's going to present the annual report. Finance Director is going to present the annual accounts. We're going to have an audit completion report mentioned by our colleague Paul Holland from the National Audit Office, and then we're going to have some questions and then some presentations. So just putting our year into context, I would say that last financial year, the business of the whole NHS really was dominated by a series of very major organisational changes that the service was anticipating. And we in NHS Direct were not immune to that series of changes, and for us it was about anticipating the decommissioning of our service and the transition to 111. During that period of great focus throughout the NHS on organisational change, I'm pleased to say that we were able to deliver a good service. We put in a solid financial performance. We're going to hear a bit more about that. We met all of our financial duties and targets. Very importantly, we maintained high levels of patient satisfaction, over 90%. And as a whole organisation, we continued to make a significant net positive contribution to the National Health Service through our series of remote multi-channel health assessment, advice and information services. And we were able to continue our progress in enabling more than half of the people who contacted us by phone to treat themselves successfully at home, which of course has a knock-on benefit in relation to avoided patient journeys, reduced demand on face-to-face NHS care, and reduced waiting times for the patients who really need it. And meanwhile, while we in the NHS were somewhat preoccupied during the year with our own internal transformations, it was clear that the world continued to move on, and patients and the public in their behaviour demonstrated that they are increasingly embracing new channels for health, and they are discovering through their own personal experiences that multi-channel and digital channels provide convenient, safe, cost-effective care. And in that context, we launched our app, which we will hear more about in a few minutes' time. So as we look ahead, we know that public services, including the NHS, are facing an extended period of austerity. And we also know that in relation to health services, one size does not fit all. In fact, one size NHS serves nobody very well, least of all the people who are most significantly vulnerable and disadvantaged. So it is absolutely imperative that the NHS learns to fully exploit the fantastic potential of everyday technology to serve people and improve people's health. So it's vital that the NHS in its overall strategy looks towards substantial channel shift, and we in NHS Direct expect to play a major part in supporting that shift for the benefit of patients and the public and the NHS. So that was what I wanted to offer to you as a sense of context for our annual report, financial statements and so on, which we're going to hear more about. Nick, can I hand over to you?
Certainly. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. So it's my job to introduce this annual report and accounts. I won't steal Trevor Smith, our Director of Finance's thunder, nor that of our auditor, as a large section of this report is quite rightly taken up with presenting the accounts. I would say that this annual report and accounts has now been laid before Parliament, so it is our job today not so much to approve it as to receive it. I would just like to draw out a few points, if I may, in just a few minutes that I have available. 2011-12 was the last year of normal full operation of the 0845 service that NHS Direct is synonymous with, the 0845, 46, 47 service and its equivalent on the web. It's pleasing, therefore, that as we move into a very substantial period of change that will see the 0845 service cease, that in its last full year we're able to present to you through this report overwhelmingly positive results. And I'd just like to pull out a few of those points. The first is that our services were more in demand in 2011-12 than they were in previous years. We saw the number of people who access our service grow phenomenally through the web, with over 10 million uses on the health and symptom checkers. Whilst we saw slightly fewer on the telephone, the numbers were still large at 4.4 million. Another 3 million people using the appointments line service that we run, 900,000 people accessing locally commissioned services, and NHS Direct being the largest provider at 350,000 calls of the new 111 service that we were piloting for the Department of Health. So in number terms, NHS Direct in 11-12 has never really served more people than it did in that year across a wide diversity of services. As Joanne has said, those services were highly valued by patients, with 90% saying that they rated the services as good or very good. And the new score that we've been using alongside others in the NHS, the so-called Family and Friends score, on a rating of 0 to 10, with 0 being not at all and 10 being absolutely, how much would you recommend the service that you received to your family and friends? And over 75%, over 3/4 of people rated the service they'd received from NHS Direct at 10 out of a score of 10, which is pretty remarkable. Very few formal complaints, with less than 1 in 10,000. It's about 1 in 50,000, in fact, formal complaints per 50,000 callers. So very low rates of complaints. Again, as Joanne headlined, the services that we provide help patients look after themselves better. Over half, it was actually 53% of patients calling us did not need to be referred on to another face-to-face service. And if you work out what patients would have done had they not called NHS Direct, we saved over 1.5 million unnecessary GP appointments and around 700,000 unnecessary accident and emergency and 999 calls. So in terms of what we do in the NHS, in NHS Direct, to support the rest of the NHS, we ensure that patients care for themselves and there's less unnecessary use made of face-to-face, and that's a very important contribution. We also ended the year in financial balance, a recurring financial balance, so our books are in good order. More of that in a moment from Trevor. So the final thing I would like to do is to pay tribute to the staff of NHS Direct. It may sound glib on such occasions to say that none of what I have just talked about would have occurred were it not for both the frontline staff who talk with patients every day, every night, every bank holiday, every Christmas day, but also the back office and support staff who provide the essential infrastructure that enables those frontline staff to do their job. And it's been my privilege to lead the organisation as the chief executive for another year, and to report on the superb achievements that our staff have enabled us to achieve. So I'd just like to put on record my grateful thanks, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of all other members of the board in recording our grateful thanks on behalf of patients and the rest of the NHS. Thank you. I would commend the report to you.
Very good. Well, I think we can say that we have received the annual report.
Yes.
And ask Trevor, our finance director, to present to us the annual accounts.
Thank you, Chair. We achieved another strong set of financial results with a £500,000 surplus for the year and cash balances of £22 million. We delivered contract cash reductions for our lead commissioner, Midlands and East, of £6 million. And we achieved cost improvement efficiency targets of nearly £16 million in the year. In total, we've now released recurrent income and expenditure savings of over £30 million. And in cash terms, that's made something like £70 million available to the NHS system over the 3 years since 2009-10. We've noted within the accounts a contingent liability due to the great uncertainty we face with ongoing 111 procurements, and our discussions with Department of Health continue on those matters. That said, we will continue to monitor and manage our resources efficiently and effectively throughout this period going forward. I'd like to pass on my thanks to all of our budget holders, all of our managers, my finance colleagues and our auditors who have enabled the production of these results, the completion of the accounts and their stringent audit. I commend the accounts to the board.
Thank you very much, Trevor. I'd like then to ask Paul Holland from the National Audit Office, who are obviously our auditors, to respond to that, and then we'll take all of that as a package and I'll see if there are any questions.
Okay. First of all, the headline is that I can confirm that the accounts received a clear audit opinion, which is what we're all striving for, and they were signed by the Controller and Auditor General on the 25th of June, and as Nick has said, they were laid in Parliament on the 11th of July. So we met the timetables, and we also were happy with the quality of the accounts and the disclosures therein. Our audit planning process identified two significant risks, both of which are assumed risks under auditing standards, so it wasn't anything specific about NHS Direct. These risks are assumed to exist in all organisations. The first of these is around the risk of management override of controls, in that management may be in a position to circumvent the controls in place, so we specifically design audit procedures to ensure that that has not happened, and I can give you a clean bill of health on that. And the second one is around income recognition. Obviously there is a possibility, and again it's linked to the other risk, that there might be manipulation of the bottom line to meet targets or whatever, and again we design specific audit procedures to ensure that that has not happened, and again a clean bill of health. The other issue that we noted has already been discussed is the amount of change in the health sector at the minute, and also specifically things that might impact on NHS Direct as a result of the move to the 111 number. We had discussions with the finance team and also at the audit committee around the potential impact of this on the accounts, and we were happy with the disclosures in the accounts that there's still too much uncertainty over that, and therefore a contingency is the correct way to report that. I think it's worth underlining the sort of good cooperation we had from the board in understanding the position. We had to be fairly challenging on this because we wanted to make sure that the disclosures were correct, and we were happy with the disclosures. We made one recommendation effectively in respect of contract management, which has been accepted. No adjustments were made to the numbers that were presented in the first draft of the accounts, and we also did not identify any unadjusted errors, which is a good thing. That's very positive. The set of accounts that was presented for audit were very good, and that suggests that the accounts process is very robust, even with a tighter deadline due to the Department of Health's consolidation. Your accounts are consolidated into the Department of Health's accounts, and also even with the fact that Parliament went to recess earlier because of the Olympics this year, so despite tighter deadlines you still produced a good set of accounts. And finally, it's worth noting as well that the recommendations that we made in last year's management letter were all implemented, and we've got no further comments on that, so it's a good news story, very positive, I would say.
Thank you, Paul. That's great. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Olympics. I'm sure no board meeting in this week would be completely mention of the Olympics. I think a couple of the things that you mentioned are really worth picking up. One was the fact that the accounts were produced well, using robust processes in a timely way. So I think that speaks volumes for the quality of the processes and the people that underlie them. It's great to hear you pick that up. Also, I think the point about we had a significant sensitive issue to deal with, and we were able to land that successfully to your satisfaction and to ours, and I'm sure that would not have been possible had the basics and fundamentals behind our accounts been at all in doubt, so that's great. I'd like to thank you as well as the finance team, and I'd also like to thank the audit committee, which I'm sure played a significant part in making all of these things work well. Thank you. So now we have an opportunity for anybody around the board table to ask questions of the Chief Executive or the Director of Finance or the auditors, particularly in relation to the accounts. Are there any questions? No? Okay. Thank you then. We can move on to perhaps some interesting and more diverse elements of our agenda today. The first of which is the attendance and contribution by our Value Awards winners. Nick, would you like to introduce them?
Thank you very much. Before asking our three award winners to come up to the front and appear for those viewing us on the internet and for posterity, I'd just like to say a little bit about the awards and what they're about, and particularly how the winners, and we have three of them. There were more winners throughout the organisation, but we have three representing very ably the award winners with us today. The awards themselves recognise the values that we in the organisation aspire to. These values describe how we behave when we are behaving at our best. Now, as we all know, those that have New Year's resolutions, not all things do we behave at our best. We aspire to be what we want, what we think we should be, and some of the time we live up to that. What we have here, though, are examples of people who, in the opinion of their peers, not of a group of senior managers sitting at headquarters, but of their peers, first of all, to be nominated by people that you work with who simply go out of their way to nominate and recognise you as people who they think exemplify those values and who live them out in their daily work. That is a phenomenal thing, just to be nominated. And we had over 50 people nominated for awards, and I know from speaking to many of those who were nominated, that in itself was a recognition that really meant something, because you go around thinking, oh, somebody really does notice what I do, and it's fantastic. And of course, then those nominations were judged by a group of peers throughout the organisation, drawn from all sorts of geographies, all sorts of disciplines, and again, as I say, very much representing the grassroots in the organisation and not some kind of senior management group. So they decided on the basis of what people had said about these award winners, how they saw them working, and what it meant in their daily work, what value they were able to bring. And therefore, the group of people who were then recognised as actually having won the awards, I think, should be rightly proud of themselves, and the fact that they have been recognised by their peers. So well done. I would like just to bring you to the front and ask you to come, and perhaps Joanne will shake you by the paw, and we can do that for the cameras. But very well done, and do come to the front. So Matthew Perkins, Health Information Advisor, who won for We Deliver.
We deliver.
Okay.
Well done, thank you.
Joe Probus, Learning Development Administrator, We Think Ahead. And Jackie Jezereski for We Care.
Thank you, Jackie. You go to the second.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for inviting us along, and feels a little bit like getting the award all over again, really. I have prepared a few words because it really did mean a lot, and I wanted to try to capture that and share that with you. When I had the phone call to say I'd been nominated and won the award, I was really quite taken aback, because reading about the people who had nominated me, what they'd written about me, and realising what they'd noticed about me as a person, as a friend and a colleague, it really meant a lot. And not knowing who nominated me for a good few days was a little bit like getting a Valentine's card and not knowing who it was. And I was plaguing people to try to find out, because I wanted to thank them. But up until I was nominated, like all of you I'm sure, I was just getting on with the job that I did every day without really noticing what it was that I did or how I did it. And certainly not how I was perceived by my colleagues. And I've always felt lucky at NHS Direct, because it's a job that I've always loved doing, and it's never really felt like a job. So being nominated at work and having the value of what I do and how this links with me as a person, having that formally recognised made me feel rather special for some time, I must say. I was nominated in the We Care category, and on the day of the awards I was able to reflect on so many wonderful years at NHS Direct. And actually I was quite reduced to tears just by the emotion of it all, but happy tears. The celebration itself was a really positive and valuable event that acknowledged the work of many colleagues across the organisation, so everyone that was nominated, and even those that weren't, but each of us. And it gave us a chance to reflect on and to appreciate and to discuss the contributions made to NHS Direct in both a personal and a professional capacity. My key to 13 successful years at NHS Direct has been having a very supportive family through some long hours, some hard work, determination, ambition, but above all, the passion for the services that we deliver. And of course, really loving the job. I've made lifelong friends at NHS Direct, and the fun and the laughter and the tears that we've all shared and shared together, they're going to stay with me forever. And I can imagine when I'm in my 90s in a nursing home, looking back on my years here. Wherever I go, that award will come with me because it means so much. And currently it has pride of place in my home office, and it's been framed. It's actually next to my wedding picture. So finally, being able to make a difference to others remains my personal core motivation in life. And I think that was really underpinned by the category I was awarded for. So I would like to thank my anonymous nominees. Thank you.
I was nominated for the award last year under the We Think Ahead, and I was surprised, and I think it's exactly what you said. really want to know who's done it, you really want to know who's nominated you, but the anonymity of it actually places a higher value. From my point of view, it was just by somebody wanted to put that effort in. And I went back and I had a look at the nomination form after, and when I saw the form and considered that somebody had taken that amount of time, it just added more value to it. The afternoon of the Long Service Awards, where we were given our awards, was just wonderful. There was people there that had been with the service more than 10 years, and people like ourselves who hadn't maybe been there that long, but who'd also been able to contribute. And it was a lovely afternoon. It was further an honour to be invited by Tricia to take part in a dinner that was for the Florence Nightingale Foundation. And the fact that the award wasn't all about just one thing, it wasn't just one afternoon, it was an ongoing value within the organisation, made it feel very strong for me. Thank you.
Well, my name's Matthew. I'm a Health Information Advisor at Nottingham. I haven't really worked for the organisation for that long, about 3.5 years now, 2 years of which is in health information, and before that as a health advisor. I also do meds preceptoring and standard health information preceptoring, and I'm really excited at the minute because we're taking part in a research project with Bristol University to help people with cardiovascular risk and depression. So I really love my job, basically. I do. I love helping people to support themselves, to empower them to make decisions. And I think it's because I have a background in teaching. So it seemed quite a natural move to move across to NHS Direct and Health Information. Last year I was nominated for and won the award for I Deliver. I was a bit shocked, a bit surprised, but yeah, I was quite touched. I think I was a little bit tearful at the award ceremony, I won't be ashamed to admit. And I was nominated for the way in which I'm very proactive with what I do. I've always had a good work ethic because I think that's what we're here to do. We're here to do a job. And also for the way in which I support others as well. And I think that's why after the award I went on to become a preceptor and to actually be a meds preceptor as well, supporting others in their roles to develop and pass along what I do as well. But I think the thing is, our work, it's very hard sometimes, it really is. It's such a fast-paced environment, and I'm very lucky to get a lot of praise and thanks from the people that we support, but because of the environment, it's quite often short-lived. That's why I think it's really important to take time to be able to take a step back and to celebrate our achievements. And it really did mean a lot to me. As you guys have said, you know, to go to the actual meal and then to come here today, it does make you feel quite special. It really does. I think, as with my colleagues that I work with and these guys as well, we live the values without even realising it. And it's not until you actually take a step back and think, yeah, I do this, I do that, that it is quite touching. So yeah, thank you very much.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Matthew, Joe, Jackie, for coming along today. I think everyone will agree, and these are three very special people representing our wider group of values ambassadors, people who've have been nominated by their peers for what they do and the way they do it, and who absolutely exemplify the best of what we are as NHS Direct, so thank you. Let's now move on to another significant thing that happened last year, which was the launch of our NHS Direct app. And I'm going to ask Roger Donald to introduce that. And I think, Roger, you're going to show us a film. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks, Joanne. So the smartphone app has very much been part of the evolution of our digital services, where we started off in '99 with a corporate website, and then in 2005 led our first foray into sort of symptom checkers and things like that, and have been developing symptom checkers over since 2005 up until today, where we're continuing to do so. Our research showed that there was a significant number of our audience accessing our services from mobile devices, and so we believe that, you know, actually producing a mobile app and mobile service would be very valuable to our patients. This came out, or this bore true, in the fact that during the first week the app was downloaded 1,000 times every hour. It was used, or to date, it's been used over 1.5 million times. It was the #1 ranked health app on iTunes for about 2 months after its launch. And we get incredibly positive feedback from our patients, and I'll just read you a couple of those from the iTunes store. It says, excellent, easy to use radio buttons, super clear graphics, concise info and advice, recommended. And another one, I found this app very helpful. I would have done nothing otherwise and continue to suffer. Thanks for making it available. And so not only are we getting this public recognition about the app, but also other industry bodies are recognising the good work that we've done. And the Carphone Warehouse Appy Awards this year put our app alongside Sky Sports News, Google Maps, eBay and YouTube with the opportunity to win an award. And so we've put together a quick short film that just showcases some of the external reviews that the app got and just some highlights of the evening at the Appy Awards.
Thank you. Appy Awards, yeah. Marketeers, what can you say?
Hi, I'm Jono from Carphone Warehouse in Orpington, and I'm going to talk to you about the NHS Direct app. It's available on Android and iOS, and it's free. This app lets you access trusted and reliable healthcare advice from wherever you are, straight to your smartphone or tablet. If you're feeling a bit rough or need medical advice, it can give you a full health assessment. You'll find it has a comprehensive range of symptom checkers and personalised guides to looking after yourself. It will either give you self-care advice or instructions on the most appropriate course of action. You have the option to save it to your device or email it to yourself to access at a later date. What I think is great about this app is the fact that you can get reliable medical advice when you might be miles away from a doctor, and that is the NHS Direct app.
Hello, I'm Dermot O'Leary and welcome to the Carphone Warehouse Appies 2020.
And the CEO of Carphone Warehouse, Andrew Harrison.
We are very fortunate to work in a amazing industry that has changed so dramatically over the last few years. I think we said it earlier, an industry that didn't exist over 3 years ago. There are now 25 billion apps being downloaded.
The Appy for health and well-being.
I hope you enjoyed tonight. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it too. Thank you for watching.
Well, that gives us a flavour of the glamour associated. Excellent.
With everything we do.
Indeed. Okay. We're going to have an opportunity to take some questions later on. If there are any questions about the app, I'll direct those to Roger. Meantime, I think what we'd also like to have a little chat about is the 111 Centre of Excellence. Trisha, are you going to talk about that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Let's move on then to talk about the Centre of Excellence in Dudley, which we've been running for a number of months now. Trisha's going to introduce it, tell us why it was set up, tell us what we've learned from the Centre of Excellence.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We started the Centre of Excellence in February of this year, and it was a performance initiative that we developed. It's also known as the POD for internal staff, and it was the purpose of it was to allow us to encourage our staff to work towards the national specification for delivering the 111 service and to test the best ways of delivering this service and optimise performance and safety. We used the learning from this pod to inform the development of our 111 model, our processes and procedures and our working practices. Based at the Dudley site, where the majority of staff have been trained to use the pathway system on delivering the 111 pilots, the staff, 50 of them went through a training programme where They were taught the principles of the 111 service, how best to use the application and to deliver the service. And we were able to do that by prioritising the calls into that Dudley site, to go through the testing ground, to give the staff more opportunity to gain experience in delivering and practising and delivering the 111 service. So what the methods we actually used were very simple. We actually told staff what we expected of them, what their role was, how we believed it was best it could be delivered. But more importantly, we actually allowed them the freedom to support one another and be supported by the management and the training staff in delivering the very best of that service. So they taught us how we could improve the delivery of the service, as well as we helping and support them. So very much the principles of the pod was about empowering our staff to do the very best job that they could. And what we actually learnt from it was we took a log of all of the issues, staff worked through those issues, gave recommendations on the best ways of overcoming what the issues were, and then from that we developed internally our own best practice. And since the pod's launch, as the board will remember, we've now started to filtrate the learnings from that pod across our organisation. So of all of our current pathways staff delivering our 111 services have now been through that process, and we'll be taking the learning further into our core service, into the 0845, over the remaining months of our service delivery.
Thank you, Tricia. That's great. So what we wanted to do in that section of the AGM was to provide a flavour of a number of important dimensions of our service. So first of all, we had our values winners, who, as we've just heard, really exemplify the best of NHS Direct and the brilliance of our individual staff in delivering our service. Then we have Roger talking about the app, which describes and illustrates how we in NHS Direct are always looking to deploy the potential of new communication channels to meet people's growing need for health advice and information online, mobile, where they are when they need it. And thirdly, how we've sought to understand, develop and improve the way in which the new urgent care access service 111 is being implemented. So those are three very important things we've done during this year, and we wanted to give a flavour of those different dimensions in the AGM, because we felt that they were all so important to the last year. Does anybody have any questions about either one of those things or anything else about the last year for our organisation? Nothing around the board table? I'm going to move on to the questions that we've had from NHS Direct members and members of the public. So we told people through our social media activities that the NHS Direct AGM was coming up, and we invited them to put questions to the board today, and we're going to relate to you a couple of those questions and provide answers, so that the people who have taken the trouble to ask us about what we're doing and why get some answers, and hopefully those answers will be illuminating more generally. So I'm going to take the first one, which was, what are your plans for managing the new reorganisation brought about by the health bill? In particular, how do you propose to involve patients into the decision-making process of the new structures? That's a very important and interesting question. The Health and Social Care Act is causing a great deal of change, not just throughout the commissioning side of the NHS, but also to us. And it's going to have a significant impact on, and is already having a significant impact on what we do. In NHS Direct, we've always tried to involve our patients in major decisions around the trust and the way we do our business in the future. And the way that we do that is we invite our 18,000 members to comment on our business plan and on our corporate objectives, and we take those comments into account as we develop our plans going forward and as we finalise them, so that we try to have an ongoing dialogue with the public, and in particular with our 18,000 members representing the public, so that we know what they think and want from us as we develop our plans. And that's the process which is not going to change, is going to carry on as we think about and have been thinking about the specific changes brought about by the reorganisation of the NHS. Nick, I think you had a question that you were going to answer. So the question I think you were keen to answer was how somebody was asking how much longer the 0845 telephone number was going to remain in operation. I think you've alluded to that a couple of times, but it's probably worth just going over that again. It's important to restate it.
And just to preface my remarks, one of the things that we found when we opened up the channel of communication to ask questions at the AGM was that people believe that NHS Direct is in charge of the whole NHS.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
And therefore asked questions about how were we organising this part of the health service or another part, or how we were setting policy for the whole of the NHS. And of course, we wish that we were in control of the whole NHS, or at least in some moments, but of course we're not. We're just in charge of our bit of the organisation. So that's relevant because, and I stress that, because the 0845 4647 service that we currently run, the government and the Department of Health set in train a decision to cease that and to replace the 0845 service with a 111 service, and the due date for that is the end of March 2013. So it's not a decision that we've taken, but it's one that the Department of Health and the government have taken. So as things stand, we expect the last call to be made to the 0845 service on the 21st of March. Why the 21st of March? Well, because it's before Easter. If you waited until a kind of nice, neat, I have a lot of respect for accountants, but a kind of nice, neat accountant's version of when we should cease, it would be the 31st of March. Except that's right bang slap in the middle of Easter, which is our second busiest period of the year after Christmas. So the 21st of March is the time when the service will cease. There is discussion about a potential extension for a few weeks, no more, of the 0845 service to cover parts of the country where the 111 service doesn't roll out by the end of March. Now, that isn't yet been clear, it hasn't yet been finalised, so we don't know whether that is going to occur or not. But if there is an extension, it will only be for a matter of a few weeks. So that's the answer to the question. There is, in the actual question, it said, how long will the premium 0845, so referring to the fact that the 0845 service costs you money. And of course, the 111 service that it will replace will be a free to call telephone number. It will be like the 999 service, where if you call it, it's free. But obviously it will only be there for health inquiries and not to use as directory inquiries or anything else. So it's free for health inquiries.
Thanks, Nick. I've got another question for you, which is about a specific part of the country. So I'm hoping that you're going to be able to maybe answer that in a more general way.
I will.
Okay, so this one is, I read in my local paper that the NHS 111 service in my area, which is Crawley, is going to be provided by South East Coast Ambulance Services and the private care company Harmony. This person has some concerns because, as we know, the British Medical Association, BMA, raised concerns about the quality of the service because of the role of non-clinicians in call handling, which is, of course, a very important role that we also have. And we believe that non-clinicians could do a fantastic job in providing health advice. So the questioner asks, please could you confirm the facts and what it'll mean for people in my local area? I think we might want to generalise that to people who are going to have their 111 service provided by other people than NHS Direct. So
absolutely. So factually, for Crawley, part of Surrey and Sussex, the service will be provided, the 111 service will be provided by South East Coast Ambulance and working with Harmony, who are a GP out of hours organisation and a private limited company. So that will happen. I'm not sure if we know precisely the go live date, but it'll be sometime in February or March 2013. So there are, I think, two parts of the question which I'm just going to disentangle. The first you might call the G4S question, which is how can a private company provide an important public service? Now, clearly, that's a matter for government, and it's way above my pay grade to answer questions like that. However, what I can tell you and tell the questioner is that we know that there is a very systematic quality assurance process that every provider has to go through before they can provide a 111 service. And there's a very comprehensive continuing requirement for quality assurance and quality checks for all of the staff involved in providing the service and for the organisation to be accountable for the delivery of that service. So I think that it is inconceivable that an organisation, be they a private sector organisation, privately owned, be they a social enterprise, a foundation, NHS Foundation Trust, or an NHS trust like ourselves, it's inconceivable that any organisation providing 111 won't do so to the required standards, because if they fall below the standards, they will be switched off. So I'm quite clear, irrespective of the politics of the situation, which I'm studiously trying to avoid, that there are clear quality checks. So our questioner from Crawley can, in my opinion, be completely assured that the service that will be provided in their area will meet the Department of Health's quality standards, and that they should not be concerned that it will somehow be poor quality just because of the nature of the organisation being responsible for providing it. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, how can it be that health advisors who are not medically qualified or nursing qualified can give advice? And of course, the reality is that the NHS Direct 0845 service extensively uses health advisors who are trained to provide a service to the public. And simply to say you're not a nurse or you're not a doctor and therefore you can't provide advice, I think would also be wrong. However, it may be that our questioner is very well informed and is pointing out the fact that for 111, only about 1 in 5 callers will end up speaking to a nurse, whereas in the current 0845 service, it's about 1 in 2. So there is a much greater chance in the 0845 service that you will speak to a nurse than will be the case in 111. We believe that as a result of that, there will be more referrals for patients to go and see a healthcare professional because they haven't spoken to one on the telephone. So it's more likely that a patient will be asked to go to see their GP, or go to a walk-in centre, or potentially go to the accident and emergency department, because the system is less reliant on nurses speaking to patients on the telephone. More likely in 111 scenario that people will be referred to be seen than advised that they can safely care for themselves at home. Both services are safe. It's just one relies more on nurses on the telephone and less referral to face-to-face, and the other less nurses on the telephone and more face-to-face. It's a choice that commissioners are making. So again, you can have your views about whether one is higher quality than the other and which one is appropriate, but from a patient's point of view, I think our questioner should be reassured that both will be safe.
Thanks, Nick. I'm just going to pass to you another question, because I think it follows on from that quite nicely, which is somebody asking us how NHS Direct bids for 111 are progressing and whether there's a break point which determines the viability of the organisation.
Okay, so I will very quickly. We anticipate that by the time 111 is completed and has been procured throughout England, that there will be about between 45 and 50 separate 111 services across the country. To date, about half of those services have reached a conclusion where the provider for those services has been appointed. NHS Direct to date is the second most popular choice of provider for those for the new 111 services, and that sounds like we're winning a big share of the services. The reality is, though, in fact, that there are very many providers of the services in different parts of the country, and we are the most popular because we've been chosen in several areas, whereas most services are going to an incumbent in that particular locality, either ambulance trust or out-of-hours provider. So to answer the person's question, once we have the results from the other half of the procurements, we will reach a conclusion as to whether we have a viable volume, because NHS Direct's sole business, its sole purpose, is providing advice on the telephone, and our future is dependent, telephone and web, and our future is determined by how much business we win. There is a break point, but I'm not going to be specific about what it is, and we will know whether we've reached it or not within a short space of time as the procurements all reach that conclusion.
Thank you, Nick. And we'll be talking more about that in our board meeting. Yes, would you like to follow that up?
Yes, I would like to, the previous point. One of the brilliant things that you said you have done is that you have saved...
There's a gentleman with a microphone just ambushing it. And would
Yeah.
you mind just telling us, telling us who you are? Or...
Yeah, my name is Andreas Michaelis. I'm one of the members.
Great. Welcome, Andreas.
Can you hear me? Yeah. You said how brilliant it is that you saved 1.5 million visits to GPs, and that's brilliant because then you get an immediate response. You feel safe, and now with this new 111 service, you're saying that 1 in 2 would probably be treated by somebody who is not, and be more referred to the GPs. So that claim, or that standard, is going to be eroded. So gradually, I suppose, you could say that more and more the GPs would take over again, and then your existence would be challenged. And my worry is that why have you decided to go down that? Is it because of austerity measures, or that you've got down the road that it won't be nurses providing the information, but it must be much more lay people? Thank you.
Shall I answer that?
Yes, thank you.
Again, people think that we are making our own decisions about these things. We're not. We are a provider of services. We can only provide those services that people want to buy. And in our case, clinical commissioning groups and primary care trusts, whether they and the National Commissioning Board. It's decisions being made by those clinical commissioning groups, primary care trusts, and the Department of Health / National Commissioning Board that is determining what 111 looks like, and that it will be a cheaper service that employs fewer nurses, and that a greater proportion of calls are handled by health advisors rather than nurses. That is not a choice that NHS Direct has made. We have to respond to what you might call the market. We are responding in tenders and in bids to what commissioners are writing down as their specification of the service that they require, and we can only sell those things that people want to buy. And it's not our patients who are making those decisions, it's commissioning authorities on their behalf. So that's the simple explanation about why we are where we are. It's not a choice that NHS Direct has made, it's simply as a result of the choices being made in the rest of the system.
Andreas, I think you'll have detected from our Chief Executive's response that we do have some concerns about that direction.
It's your professional standards, you've got to, that being challenged.
What I'd like to say is that I'm convinced that the 111 service will evolve over time into one that supports more people to look after themselves. And if you look at the 12-year journey that NHS Direct has been on, it has moved over time to learn, react, respond and refine its services so that more and more people can be looked after safely by themselves at home. And I'm convinced that 111 will go on a similar journey. and will evolve into a multi-channel service. Of course, at the moment, the services that are being commissioned are telephone only. So I do think we will return to a more clinically rich service that places more emphasis on people looking after themselves at home, but it may take some time. And I'd like to then move on to our final question, which is about that new world of multi-channel health and advice and information. It's quite an interesting challenge to us. So somebody asked us, why is it that if I want to email a health information question, I'm looking at Matthew here, I think Trish is going to answer this question. If I want to email a health information question to your team via the website, you can't answer it if it's about symptoms and I don't already have a diagnosis. Interesting challenge, Tricia.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Email is an increasingly popular way for our patients to access reliable and accredited health information, and our staff do a fantastic job in ensuring the high quality of the information they do share. Without a clear diagnosis, it would be difficult to give that reliable health information, because many conditions start with very similar symptoms, and it could often lead to misleading information being shared with a patient if we want to have a clear diagnosis in which to share the information with. And of course, our primary concern is to make sure the health information is appropriate in a language that's understood by the patient and actually informs them and allows them to make appropriate decisions for themselves. And we wouldn't want them to delay seeking medical help should that be appropriate by sharing inaccurate information.
Thank you. I mean, I guess my view would be over time, we and other parts of the health economy, health community will learn how to use email even more than we do today. But it's a pretty new area, isn't it?
It's very new. We've been delivering this service for just over 12 months now, so it's very new. And with feedback from our users, we are actually, as we've just described to the previous question, developing and enhancing our responses appropriately.
Thank you, Tricia. That's great. Okay, well that brings to an end the questions that we thought that we were able to address today in the AGM. And it also brings us towards the end of our AGM. Is there anything else that I should have done but haven't? Trevor?
It's not something you should have done but haven't. It was just a comment I'd like to make, I think, that as a board member, through routine board meetings, we tend to concentrate on the fine detail of the organisation and on things that are not going quite as well as we would like. So I found the last hour sort of very enlightening, and 3 facts struck me very, very strongly. The first is how well we are regarded by patients. Any organisation would give their right hand to have 1 expression of concern for every 50,000 contacts. That's a remarkable level of performance. We should recognise the contribution our frontline staff make to reducing the workload to colleagues in the rest of the NHS, particularly general practitioners and accident emergency departments. And we should recognise how impressive it is that we've achieved that with significantly less income than we've had in the past. That to me adds up to a very, very successful year. So I think we should support Nick's thanks to all of our staff, but we should also recognise as a board the contribution that you and Nick have made to the leadership in the organisation. It's been a difficult year in terms of the whole NHS, but we have been very successful through it, so thanks very much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. I think that's an extremely helpful summary, actually, just taking that step back. And it is probably, indeed, something I should have done. So thank you for doing that. And with that, I'd like to close our AGM. I'd like to take 5 minutes break, and then we'll be coming back into our normal public board session. Thank you to everyone who's come. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question, and thank you more broadly to everybody in the organisation who's contributed to what Trevor has rightly described as a very successful year. Thanks.